I'm Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
This is Cartoonist Kayfabe Show and Tell, and I recently just got back from Japan, Jimmy. I guess I'm on record for being Katsuhiro Otomo fan, so when I was out there, I was showered with gifts and information about Otomo Sensei, and I'm just a few days fresh from being back home. I want to go through some of this stuff. These books did not feel real to me until they got to the house. We're officially here, so I could start cutting some of these things open, and we could take a look at some of these, man. Are you ready to do this?
I am so down for that.
The one thing I was on the hunt for when I went out there is this right here. The newest episode. It's a one-shot piece that Otomo did not too long ago. Discovered that it's actually a sequel to this story. From what my guys said, this is part 1. This is part 3. Very Otomo-like, man. Part 2 was never done. It hasn't been done yet. So we're going to have to blade this fucker, give him some color so that we can get in there. But this is the most expensive Otomo book this is the most expensive comic I bought out there at $10. Bought 2 books for $10 because it's so cheap. The same way we complain about there not being easy Otomo to get here, same deal out there. The copies of Domu that you're going to buy are just one of those 800,000 that sold way back then. Hasn't been reprinted since.
That's interesting. That's surprising for a book that sells like that.
Yeah, so it just trades hands.
Yeah. Which is also surprising to me, because why would you ever part with it? Once it gets into your collection, man.
I personally sold about 5 copies of Domu at the Mandarakes when I was there, just telling people that it existed there. Dudes from other countries, a German photographer, fashion photographer. He's like, yo, you want to hang out? They know me from Instagram, and hit me up. Yeah, like if I find Domu out here, oh, it's at every Mandarake, man. And then dudes are just like showing it off. Boom, one after the other, man. So it might even be hard to get Domu in Tokyo now.
Kayfabe effect on Domu in Tokyo.
Yeah, totally. And it went for between $25 and $40, depending on the condition.
That's steep.
It is.
For anybody that isn't familiar with this, whenever we've both been to Tokyo buying manga, and I mean a lot of it's $2-3, $1. It's very cheap compared to book prices here. So, man, $25, $30, $40. That's unheard of. I didn't see any books for that price.
Yeah.
That I was looking at.
To give you some idea on Otomo prices, Akira obviously far more popular than Domu, so more of those are in circulation. All 6 books, $40.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. That's a good way to give some perspective on it.
Now, I know when you went to Tokyo, you came back with this baby.
I did.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I paid for it, but it, maybe $10 at the most, probably.
Yeah. Obviously, this would be before almost all of that material that we know from the untranslated Otomo comes before Akira. And what the story is here, I think they told me it loosely translates to a war or something, and you could see the same characters here. So, but what the story is here, it's about a dozen short stories about some fictional idea of a war between, I think, the Japanese and the Soviets or something. Really good art. One of the things that when you look in those other tankobon that are not Domu or Akira, is a lot of high concept stuff and a lot of chatter, a lot of conversation, you know what I mean? So not necessarily the most visually blockbuster kinds of pages or storytelling, but certainly very accomplished work. And that's pretty friggin' blockbuster.
Yeah, I was going to say, flipping through this, it looks mature. It looks like very identifiable as Otomo, and, everything we love about his work.
Yeah. So let's just burn this into our mind, because this is late 70s, early 80s version of Otomo.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Tank battle.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
Yes, sir. Holy fuck. Yes, sir.
Strong work. Hard to understand why this isn't, hasn't been brought here. And I mean, it has to be by Otomo's choice, I imagine.
That's all.
Because, like,
It would be here.
we
in
would
Tucson.
want it, right?
Yeah.
Like, bring it on, man.
Yeah, and the first day I got out there, and we had a party at this cafe with many people from the manga industry, and we were talking about I brought up at the Anime Expo, Kodansha announced that they're going to be reprinting all of Otomo's work, and they all laughed at me and said, he said that before here. So hopefully we get these translations.
You know, I wonder the way these guys work, if it's a matter of, there's a bunch of stuff you want to do, and the schedule's just demanding, like you just don't get to do it all. So, reprinting something may not be high enough on the priority list to get done. And
it just wouldn't simply be that to the way Otomo works. I saw the first printing of the first Akira Tankobon. The explosion, it's different than the way it looked in the magazine, and it's different than the version that we know.
Right.
So he's constantly retooling things, so it's not trivial for him to just reprint things.
It's very easy to take this stuff for granted, but when you look at his work, if you start to think about it, you don't work at that high of a level if you're not obsessed.
Yeah.
If you're not demanding of yourself, you don't get this end result. So it makes sense that if he's going through something to reprint, it'd be like, oh yeah, I have to fix this thing or that thing. Something that wouldn't occur in a million years to the readers looking at it to think it looks perfect. But, to work at that level, like, that's what your eye is.
We're going to see some examples, too, of some of the pages that in their original state compared, and you'll have to compare them to the way they look in the books that we have. But let's take a quick gander, man. They open up strong, too. Selfie sticks and all that, man.
I love all of this, like seeing the ephemera, that goes with the serialization or the publication in this kind of periodical.
Yeah, and it's the editor who's making all these decisions about what this weird stuff is.
It was really cool to see it in this format.
Yeah. This was hard to find. This was the hardest thing for me to find out there in Tokyo. It took about 3 weeks, and the way I discovered it, Jimmy, is I was showing this picture to everybody.
This would have been an older. This was not on a newsstand or the equivalent of a newsstand. This is an older issue. Is that a little bit, a month?
Right. Yeah. May, July.
I remember seeing it on social media. Kind of a big deal when this came out. But I also remember it was a few months ago.
Right. So however many pages this is, it's like 20 pages. My dudes knew I was looking for this. We were in this shop checking things out, and we were close to like the storyboard books because I was looking for the Steam Boy storyboards that Otomo did. And my homeboy Pun P is like this, looking around, and I'm like, your fist is on it, and there was a stack of them, but he was like literally like resting his fist, like looking around, trying to like read the spines of the storyboard books, and I'm like, it's right there, like I got the thing I wanted, and I believe there are scanlations, and I'm gonna put a link, so read them and weep, because I'm sure the scanlation will disappear a day after the video was live, man. So this was crucial. Like, I really wanted this thing, man.
It's a really cool artifact.
Yeah.
And I think there's a center spread. That's pretty neat. So it's a, fold out poster like we've seen in Wizard magazines.
Fun.
But really awesome. It's the cover image. So, just a big scale.
Now, I know you pulled some other good stuff from the rest of the magazine, right? Like, there was like some cool things.
Yeah, I plan to continue going through this because that's pretty great. Like, look at that.
Yeah. When
I couldn't get a sense of like a genre or something that would be coherent. This is some of the stuff that I pulled. I think is this character. And I just liked well, you'll see. She takes off the eye patch and here you go. Like, it's so bizarre.
It wouldn't be a theme, it would be age bracket. And so this would potentially be seinen manga, which was similar to Akira, Or the next step, I think, would be like Gekiga for like slightly older than adolescent. Whoa, that's awesome. Cut them motherfuckers down.
This was the story that stood out to me on a kind of a quick flip through.
But
I love it all, man.
We're gonna keep this all Otomo for now.
Yes.
One of the things that was noteworthy, though, when I was in the Kodansha archives, Young Magazine was published this way too. Saddle stitched, thick, stapled.
Yeah, show that
book.
off too, like so they can see this edge, because that's a really unusual bind for a book this thick. I don't know,
For us,
300 or 400 pages there, and it's saddle stitched instead of perfect bound. Which, you know, for contrast, this is your perfect bind. Usually, whenever you see a couple hundred pages, they put it on a flat spine.
Yeah, and it's
this
basically
one is rounded.
Yeah, it's basically the same page count.
I enjoy that. And Ed, you said this is a one shot. This story.
Yes.
So did somebody explain that to you? I didn't know that. I thought it might have been a new serial that was starting up.
They did not. I was reading online a little bit more.
Okay.
They thought that it was episode 1. So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But when Akira was serialized in Young Magazine, and I took a look at those very first issues, it was so apparent comparing the Akira piece with everything else that there was something special here.
Yeah.
It was so clear. You know, a lot of those things were so dashed off. And a part of the genius, because I looked at about 70 episodes. A big part of the genius is Otomo figuring out a way to draw such complex stuff on a weekly basis. Everything else in the mag was a little bit more dashed off. So it's like he has some special tricks to be able to do this that just everybody else did not. And when Arasawa's talking about when Akira comes out, when Otomo starts making manga, everything changes. You see it in these magazines. It's so different than everything else, man. So much more accomplished, so much more polished, and not even talking about the cinematic compositions and all that.
Yeah. One last note.
Yeah.
How bad do you want him to do a Terry Funk manga after seeing that guy?
Yeah, sure. So I'm out there with my bros, and we're talking Otomo. They know I'm down with Otomo and all that shit, man. And my homeboy Aki Yanagi is like, did you ever see Otomo draw Black Panther? And I said, what the fuck are you talking about, man? He said, yeah, it really happened. And I found the image online, and I told Aki that it was published in a Popeye magazine. So he and I ran to this town called Jimbocho that has all old bookshops. It's where Shueisha is, and it's where Shagakin, the other publisher who does the morning brand of magazines. So I think by virtue of being close to two big publishers, and Kyoto City, where Kodansha is just a short taxi away. There is this long strip of just very, very old magazine and bookshops, and you could get almost anything you want. And I went into this lady's shop, and it was like music and culture magazines. She had every issue of Popeye. So it's like, we got to figure out which issue of Popeye specifically, man.
Wow, that sounds like heaven.
Yeah, it was so great, man.
And also, like, it could also be like purgatory or something, because I could see getting stuck there forever.
I want to go back.
Yes.
I want to go back. So, of course, man, you're in the right place when you read All American Comics on the cover.
That's a great cover. I love the color scheme on that cover.
Yeah, I do too, man. And this thing, I mean, we could really get lost just in this in a single issue, but we'll stick to the germane topic at hand, but with a little bit of detours here and there, man, because we have to look at some, this is from 1978. Let's take a look at some Japanese 1978 Marvel cosplay. Wow. There's a Spider-Woman.
That's a pretty good cosplay, too. What a costume. That's great.
Yeah.
These are amazing.
I just love, 30 years after the war, 35 years after the war, Japanese dude wearing, the Captain America
This
gimmick.
is super fun. Is this who's posing? Is it some wrestler that's posing in the costume? I guess they had to find a guy that was muscular.
Yeah, and it says here, triple WF. Yeah, they had to find somebody who's muscular, but somebody should have sent that memo to Ryoichi Ikegami, because when we see his Captain America, it's going to be pretty fun. Now, Kayfabers. Jim and I, man, we don't know it all. And I certainly don't know what the heck this is, but I want it. So if you guys know what the heck we're looking at here, let me know.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is. It's part of this All American Comics group, but that is not any comics that I have seen.
Yeah. Yeah, not at all. And I want it. They do some stuff, man, with some new Adams. You know, the heavy hitters, dude. Frazetta. There'll be, you know, there's Barry Windsor Smith stuff here. So this kind of answers some questions from our Wizard eps a little bit when we were talking about, like, okay, so after Conan and before Weapon X, like, he's talking about he bows out of comics for a while. Some of this is what happens.
Studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are certainly collectors for these kinds of posters and prints and portfolios.
There we go, man.
Wow.
Look at that, man. So this is Ikigami, the cartoonist who brought us Crying Freeman, Mai the Psychic Girl, Sanctuary.
And what could have been Captain America.
Yes, I do have a Spider-Man comic he drew, but we'll get into that in a different show and tell, man. And here we go. We should absolutely not give short shrift to these. The whoever did this Iron Fist, I don't know. Kayfabers, maybe you could call that out and let us know what the manga was that of the mangaka who's responsible for this, and that Doctor Strange. But this right here, Katsuhiro Otomo, doing Black Panther. Did you ever think in a million years you would see such a thing?
It is so bizarre to see and to think about. Like, imagine a comic like that by him.
Oh, I know. Closest thing we got was that Batman comic from Batman Black and White.
Yeah, I guess so. That's such a bizarre object.
Yeah, and I mean, I bought this magazine like just for this.
Yeah.
Just for this spread. And there's more. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, man. Like, look, I've never seen anything in any American publication that highlighted comics by Les Daniels. That's super important book for me. So
That's pretty neat, this whole selection of what you have here, like the Steranko History of Comics, the Jules Pfeiffer, you know, the comic books, the great comic book heroes. It's pretty interesting to see this. I picked this up at a used bookstore not too long ago, History of the Comic Strip. It's kind of cool. You know, they're doing a good job cataloging.
yeah,
Probably better than the American comic scene would have been conscious of at this time.
in manga, we noticed that the sound effect is integral to the artwork. It's woven in, so it's like they're studying, you know, sound effects in American comics.
This is a really cool. I love this spread.
And they call it an encyclopedia, but I sure hope that they don't take that to heart, man. Because, like, yeah, these are fine, but there are other ways. They're not gospel.
I always wonder about the Japanese comic sound effects.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some manga that's translated and there'll be footnotes of what the sound effect is. And it'll be very specific, like sound of an airplane overhead. And it's like, what is that? Is that like explaining the onomatopoeia, or is it something different? Like, I can never totally understand how that translation works.
I got some scoop on how American comics affected the mangaka of that earlier generation. And it would be the GIs who were there at war in the 40s would just leave their comics.
Yeah.
So you could get them on the base and they would just like leave them. So there are Shigeru Mizuki comics where he's doing like his EC riff, including horror hosts. I got from my homeboy Pun P, I got a collection of Shigeru Mizuki comics where he's drawing this character called Rocket Man, but it's Superman with the S on the chest and Plastic Man. Inspired by just picking up these dirty, old, crusty, stepped-on American comics. But this is an Otomo episode, man. We could keep this going. We could talk about $125 in 1978 pony sneakers and shit. But we should check out this issue of Brutus, man. All dedicated to Otomo. And includes another small comic. I put this one under the Google Translator app. Tried to make sense of it. And what I gather from the context clues and how I had to like parse things out myself is that it's kind of like that that Andy Warhol thing about how, you know, like rich people and poor people, everybody needs groceries. So it's like, here's a communal space with different kinds of forms of like economic stratum and different kinds of people within society and how they interact with that space. That's kind of like what I'm think I got from the Google Translate app as I ran it through while checking this out.
It's pretty cool to see that as almost like an American comic book format.
Right. And, those weekly manga, like, it's about American comic size.
Yeah.
It's when it becomes tankobon that it becomes that smaller digest kind of size. So what I think we are getting here with some of these things, we're going to get some pages that have not been published since the earliest editions. I think 2012, 2014, somewhere in there, he did that exhibition where he was showing off like every page of Akira, and I stop and marvel at this, just like, this is incredible. Like, the mangaka rarely get rid of their original art, and the more successful ones, they do buy apartments to just like store their stuff.
Where their art lives.
Yeah. So I wonder if this is what we're looking at here with Mr. Otomo. Look at that. We need to get some Japanese homies, man, to here in town to like read me a story.
Yes. Read me a catalog.
Yeah. And this is how the artwork was presented at the exhibition.
It's interesting to see, considering the number of pages. I remember whenever that exhibition was floating around online, and you would see just, think about the number of pages to try to display. So it's nice to see the display setup.
Some installation exhibition, like the Domu wall, which was always, like, it felt so right the way he drew that in Domu. The drawing looks more right than that does.
It does. Although that's pretty neat.
Yeah. If we see it on the angle, I bet it would look really cool.
Look, do you think that block is there for, like, to do selfies in front of it?
It totally is. Totally is. You got to get in there and put the grimace on your face. Yeah, they think of it all, man. Ooh, look at that, man. False start pages.
That's what can you say about a spread like that?
Okay, man. Now this is some of the stuff where it's like, I thought I would never see this shit again. So like, this is legit, like, we've seen this, but this is the sequence I was talking about in my Kayfabe Weekly, where in the first trade paperback of Akira, like, bust out your copy and you will see this strip, but it's in black and white line, and Otomo adds some beats to it, makes it far more Dave Cronenberg, like, but it's so eerie in color, man.
I do love seeing the color version of this stuff. Like, Steve Olaf did a great job on the epic color, but this is totally different flavor.
If I had to guess, I would say gouache. When like when I was looking at it original site, yeah. I would say that it's gouache that was used to accomplish that.
That's absolutely stunning.
Unbelievable.
It's hard for me to wrap my head around, like, you do all this black and white pen ink work, but then you can turn out this cloudscape in paint that's just perfect, and you can see the light, and I don't know how. I don't know how you can be that kind of a virtuoso when you know the amount of time that has to be spent just drawing in ink.
Oh, and I bet this describes, like, the exact nibs and shit he uses. Kayfabers, give us some help.
That's those Meru nibs. I don't know that they're too exotic.
Mm-hmm.
And they really are like the Hunt 102s. I think they're better quality personally just from using both. But,
yeah.
I mean, it's very comparable tool.
The man in the studio. Bibliography.
I think Guillermo del Toro was in one of these. These must be different people talking about influence of his work.
Right.
See this tiny little headshots. Probably everybody's happy to talk about Otomo's influence.
Keeping a schedule.
That's interesting. Bring your translator over for that.
Yeah. We're going to end on this piece because We need to solicit the Kayfabe brain trust on a couple of things. Look at this, dude. Reference material.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like, we always heard that he based the Domu building on the projects that he grew up in. There it is, man. All of it. You don't make these things in a vacuum.
I like seeing the reference images. You see like where he goes off model. It's not tracing. What is that? Seriously, like what? Do you know what this is from?
No.
Look at that distortion. Jeez.
It's badass work, man.
It's staggering to think of the, primarily one guy generating this.
Right. They call him Otomo Sensei for a reason. And I like this little studio shot because small, kind of confined space, a lot of natural light. It's piles, but also clean, like very functional.
Shelves of books.
Yeah, as we all have, right? There's the man. Comfortable chair. Super comfortable chair. That's key. Oh, man, some stickers. Got to thank Pun P for this one, man.
Yeah, that's a nice book.
And then Aki Yanagi, one of my primary translators, he just gave me this album. He said, yeah, Otomo painted this, man. And I'll put a link to the actual album, the music, in the video, because a lot of people said that it makes sense. It's like a EDM.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to hear that.
Yeah. It's kind of like an EDM, cyberpunk, digital kind of music.
I like seeing those paintings. That front one looks like it's a, like a tight shot.
Yeah, like
so
blown.
you get to see some of the brush strokes and some of the construction there.
Yeah. Let's end things.
This behemoth.
Yeah.
What do you know about this?
I know nothing. I know zero about it.
Man, that's a big book.
Yeah, we'll be sort of. Ah, wow. Okay, I know everything about it. This is Farewell to Weapons.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
In like almost kind of almost like artist edition level. Now, what's interesting is panels like this.
Mm-hmm.
When they were printed, he had them projected on a screen and took a photo of the screen, and that's what made it into the final volume. So this would be very like interlaced.
It's very bizarre to go from like the painted to these like two color. Oh man.
Yeah, it just had to do with pagination, I think.
That makes sense.
See, yeah, like
Right.
in the panels, like it would look like that, and that might be a clue into what we're gonna end this episode on.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
This is the stuff.
this is so fucking cool, man. So it's like, is the red pen the editor? Is the red pen Otomo? What do we got going on here, man?
Yeah, I wonder what these edits and marks are even for. If they're like color guides, if they're revisions.
Dioramas.
It's cool to see the screen tone all blown up.
Right.
It's like magic the way this stuff looks at different scales. You see it, and then you see the printed version. It's tightened up. The colors blends a little bit with dot gain on the paper.
Yeah, you're right, man. And it all sort of like has its purpose.
It's also developing that eye. When like we see it all in the printed finished piece, these guys see it all in that like original art stage where it's like, nope, I know how this marker will look whenever it's shrunk down a little bit and printed on newsprint.
Right. Now this is the sexy stuff, man. Because like we see these hyper detailed pieces, but the things I was marveling at most when I was out there, man, was checking out the Ninja Scroll dudes' character designs and just capturing so much with like the perfect line, finding the perfect line every time. And no matter which way you slice it, it's got to be tough, whether it's a Mickey Mouse or actually trying to do like human figures.
Yeah, it's this is just other level. That finding that single line, like you say, is really. I mean, it's almost it's in the eye, right? You know, it's just his ability to see.
Yeah.
I've heard artists talk about that, guys that have those, you know, tens of thousands of hours drawing, and you really just you sense it. You know, you're sketching out that figure or whatever, and it's 20 lines that define the arm, but you almost intuitively recognize the one that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's like Kim Jong-gi would talk about that sort of thing. And this is the kind of thing that, like, the average viewer, like, wouldn't think about the fact that every single thing you see on screen has to be thought out.
Is that digital color, right?
Looks like it.
Yeah. So cool. These are really nice.
If I accomplish like one of these drawings in a lifetime, I would be happy and satisfied.
I saw a zine an animator put together, and it was all background images, and it was pretty cool, you know, because it was like that was the focus and stuff. That's something that I, you know, as a cartoonist, I think about, and it's like that's how you could get better, you know, like learn that set, do those settings, make that setting the character, and you see it in masters, like you'll see it where the, you know, the top quality work, they're doing that, they're getting every inch of that screen or of that panel
right
is working.
Now in these storyboards, I'm seeing many different hands. It's not all Otomo, and maybe none of it's Otomo. But there's definitely several people who are contributing to these storyboards.
This
Farewell
book's an
to Weapons.
incredible resource, man.
Yeah.
I want to see a book like this for like all the stuff I love.
There in the one main store where I got the new Otomo piece, there are beautiful editions of every Studio Ghibli set of storyboards for every movie, dude. Reasonably priced, man, but just not like if you're traveling across the globe. Take up a lot of real estate. Could be. I mean, it's 184 pages of storyboards we just looked at. Like that could be all of them for the flick, you know?
Yeah.
Farewell to Weapons. But we're going to end something. We're going to end this episode on a conundrum, Jimmy. Now, Jimmy, when I did my Tokyo Kayfabe Weekly, it was the day after I went to Kodansha, which was also the same day that I went to this memorial library of the man who created a comic het. And I was able to take a look at issue 1, the first issue of Young Magazine that had the first installment of Akira. And I was blown away by the fact that there were pages, maybe a dozen pages I've never seen before, and I was allowed to make some Xeroxes. And this one was important to me because I was highlighting the fact that it's all pixelated, but this was published in like 1982 or 83. Like, there's no Photoshop, and the only thing I could think about was these squares were painted. But you look at it, and these squares are perfect. Can you do, I mean, what's one line? 500 squares?
Yeah, it would drive you over the edge.
I think so.
Like nobody's built for that.
Yeah, I think so. Because there almost isn't two together that are the same color. So it's like every one, it's a mosaic of different colors. So Kayfabers, man, and anybody who has any knowledge of old print techniques or anything. How would this have been accomplished? This is published this is printed 2 size. This is how big the spread would be in Young Magazine. I see no interlacing that would have been from a direct TV screen. If they were shooting the screen, there would be these black lines. Whenever he was doing Farewell to Weapons, the comic, you would see these black lines go across. After we hung out 2 days ago, have you ruminated on what this could possibly be in any way, shape, or form other than just painting each square?
I don't know the answer to that, Ed. I'm happy to turn it over to the Kayfabe community to get them to weigh in. I don't think it's painted. I just can't fathom painting this, especially for, we've talked about this a lot, but early in the process of the book, who knows what it's going to be. This would be an exorbitant amount of resources to paint. I think there's some kind of process that we just aren't familiar with. Something of exporting a screenshot, a monitor, zooming in on something. I don't know exactly what, but this feels like it has to be, there's something there that we just don't know. Something maybe from the video game industry, that would have been ahead of what we were seeing on computers, but was available to some people. Possibly something military, some kind of radar satellite photo and maybe zooming in on that. I really don't know the answer. And obviously it's manipulated, this is the image that he wants, in terms of the color. So I don't know how this is made. I'm as curious as you are, and hopefully somebody can weigh in on this.
Now the question is, will we be stumping the Kayfabe Brain Trust for the very first time? Because every time we had a question, the answer would come in, an answer that was totally satisfactory to me.
I have a feeling if we get some good answers, what we're doing is reaching back further. Like, we're going to get the answers from somebody that's 10 years older than us or 15 years older than us that is familiar with, design and graphics and production from that time period. But I just don't know what was used then. I don't know how this would have happened. I don't know how he would, it's equally interesting to me that he thinks of this.
Yes.
It must be something that crossed his desk and he must have been like, that'll be the perfect effect at some point. Whenever you're drawing or whenever you're referencing something, you'll see things that don't fit the story you're working on, but you'll make that catalog of like, this is an effect to be used. And maybe he saw this somewhere. Again, video games, military, I don't know.
It does have a Doppler radar vibe.
Yeah, it's got to be something that he must have seen and just thought that's perfect or that's right. But again, the part where he's able to manipulate it too, like that adds another level. I just don't know.
Yeah, you ain't doing that on a shit. Even a TRS 80 is like brand new and definitely can't handle that. So Commodore can't handle that.
Yeah.
Fuck, Kayfabers, help us out, man.
I'm very curious to hear what comes back in regards to this. Somebody knows.
In the meantime, man, let's just cross our fingers and get the hell out of here, Jimmy. So, Kayfabers, if you haven't done so already, if you're new to the channel, you're just checking it out because you're down with Otomo in the same way we are. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that we can let you know whenever we have new videos available.
You can find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise in our spread shop. There's a link below the video to that.
I'm literally going to go get a microscope, Jimmy. Give them the marching orders.
Read more comics.